Welcome to Smalls Talks Balls, presented by Champions Round. And now your host, Steph Smalls.
What is going on, everyone? I am Steffi Smalls. Finally, another episode of Smalls Talks Balls. I have been kind of, had my focus on golf a little bit with the Masters and the excitement of my own season-long team doing very well. But I am back to talk NFL, and I had to bring on finally my good friend Daniel Harms, film analyst for FFA and RGR, a guy that absolutely can break down film like no other. And now we have to gear our focus to the NFL draft. How are you going on, Dan?
It's great. I'm glad we're finally able to do this. And I just wanted to let everybody know that's what I'm trying to do in the fantasy space, is really try to connect film and fantasy, because we have a ton of like analysts and analytics and numbers and things like that. So we're trying to bridge the gap and figure out how you can still use film to actually analyze and make into season decisions. Like you can have decisions between player A and player B based on the numbers, but how do they compare on the film?
How do
so
let's get a marriage of the two of them. How can we combine them both? Because I think there's a play, everyone has their, and I think this week, even on Twitter, everyone kind of got some. I tried to make it. Who did I try to make it? Maybe ETN day. I did my best, and then I woke up to analysts, analysis versus film, and I'm like, that's not that's not the way I wanted to go. But I think everyone has their focus and what they like to do. But let's use both to highlight each other. And it's very easy to focus in on a lot of, and I was listening today to, I think it was Tailgate podcast with PFF, and they made a good point. It might've been the other podcast. I might be mixing up, but too many podcasts in one day. Is that like, it's very easy to write a guy off, these rookies. Very easy to, right? You don't like this, you don't like that. But is there a way that we can find the diamonds in the rough that if they do have a system that complements them, what can they be? So rather than us just getting rid of guys, is there stuff that if they do land in a system that is ready for them, can they be and flourish and do fantastic? And that's how we see these guys every year end up doing fantastic, because no one expected it. But maybe they should have, because you watch the film and you see them on a team that wants to make the best of them, and it's not as surprising.
Definitely. There's always like to talk about your favorite sleepers. Typically sleepers in drafts aren't going to go on to be super fantasy productive, but there's always that one guy. So that's why you always see people try to get that diamond in the rough that they have and be their guy, so they can say, look, I looked at him and I found him in that point. So there's always going to be like day three guys that come out into the draft and they find that spot with their right team, like James Robinson, UDFA, came into the Jaguar system and then blew up because they used him properly, and he was actually in a system that made sense. He got the ball a ton. All of that production going to one player makes a ton of sense. So just understanding the strengths and the weaknesses of these players. Sometimes we don't always get all of them. Like I don't know a lot of the day three guys yet. Just it's not feasibly possible for me with being a stay-at-home dad to really get that done. But we're trying.
And to be able to watch as much as you want to on someone, it's not possible. Even I do my very best, but you literally cannot get through everyone's tape. It's just not possible, especially those later guys. And I think this might be a draft that we see, especially for fantasy, and I'll get your take on it, because of how deep of a defensive class it is, which I find it a very strong defensive class, especially defensive backs. I think that there are guys that are, the drop-off happens at some point, but there's a lot of guys that are NFL ready tomorrow. And there's a lot of guys that with a little bit of time, they're going to produce, right? So it's going to make it interesting for fantasy. And maybe I wasn't even planning on going right into running back position, but I think the running back position is interesting because these guys are going to fall as far as we look at for fantasy, right? Everyone gets very excited in the first round, second round, but you might see some guys in the third, fourth round that end up having some serious fantasy value. Is there any running backs that have stood out to you since you started looking that you think, no, they're not going to be necessarily a first round guy? Maybe there's a late round second. Are they an early third, even a fourth? Because I think this class is deeper than people realize.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. And that's kind of have to figure out our jargon. Are we talking like rookie draft 4th round, or we're talking about like the actual draft?
Right. So the actual draft, I'm
Okay.
saying, because it's hard, but that's, there's a lot of clarity that needs to be made because it's easy to get confused. Like where is that going to match up in your own draft? Because if they are, they go in the 4th round, that doesn't mean that they're going to be the 4th running back off the board in your fantasy draft. So as far as fantasy goes, in the regular draft, who's a guy that's going to slip, you think, but still hold strong value in fantasy?
So I've been higher on Jerome Ford than a lot of people. Pretty much the entire draft process. I love what he brings in terms of the true breakaway ability. There's not a lot of running backs in this draft that have legit true breakaway from all levels of the field. I think he has that even at the NFL level. And playing at Cincinnati, you talk about teams that like college teams that really have that culture that you want to draft.
You were talking about culture, right? Like those teams that you want to draft from, which I love that you're making this point because I think Cincinnati is a very polarizing team that's also not getting talked about as much as they could, but continue. Yeah,
definitely. He brings a guy that last year was his first year being the bell cow in Cincinnati, and he handled it. He handled it really, really well, especially against Alabama at times. He didn't break off a ton of runs, but that's because Alabama's fast at all 3 levels. It's hard to really get into those open spaces when the team defense knows that you want to run the ball, establish the play action to help your quarterback, things like that. But he really does have all of that one-cut ability in terms of an outside zone type of offense. So he really finds a team that runs an outside zone, really that allows him to work through his progressions, find a hole, even cutback lane that really he can take off into. I think that would be perfect for him. And I do think he's a natural pass catcher, attacks the ball with his hands, doesn't let it travel too far to his body, has a varied route tree, not necessarily like going out, splitting out wide and running a bunch of different routes, but he can run the wheel route. I've seen him run a couple different areas from the slot. So he has that flexibility as well. Something that really you find that team for him probably early day 3, if not late day 2. He's going to be someone that I'm going to have too much of that probably ends up burning me because that's what I do. But yeah,
that's what we do. We're very similar in that way. When you like a guy, you go with full force into I'm committed to this dude, and that is it. People had talking about ball security issues, whatever it was with him, and a little slow as far as reading blocks in front of him. But I agree. I think there's guys, and again, this is going back to that phrase that stood out to me so much is I get it. There's stuff that you can knock on guys, but what can we look at and how can it translate to the next level if a team that wants to take that player on and give them the best position from their talents and make them better. And I think he's a perfect example of that. I don't know. Is there a team that you have on your wish list for him?
I don't. I mean, I would be okay with him going to like the Falcons. I think that makes a lot of sense. They need a bell cow back to help their young offense now grow. They're going to have some wide receivers in there, some tight end positions. Now they just added Ferkser, which isn't going to be like a huge blocking asset for him. But at least we saw Arthur Smith run that outside zone with Derrick Henry, and he found some cutback lanes and was able to break down the field. So I think that marriage makes a lot of sense if that's what Arthur Smith wants to continue to do if he's going to be there for a little while. So I think that's where I would want him to land. You got to build up that offensive line first, but I think
the poor Falcons, huh? Like they're a team that I want to root for. Then you lose Matt Ryan, and now you look at that wide receiver room, and you guys are starting to lose me a little bit. Like they low key have one of the worst rosters in the entire league, and it's kind of getting everyone's talking about it a little bit, but I don't think if you look on paper, that team's not in a great place right now, and they have a lot of needs. And Marcus Mariota, you can make an argument there. What exactly are we doing? How much of a Band-Aid is that? And that brings me to, and this will kind of wrap into it because we just talked Cincinnati. Desmond Ridder, right? So these quarterbacks are very, very this is. And it happens every year. We act like it doesn't, but it does happen. Everyone decides who their darling is. And that's the guy that everyone gets excited about. There's usually a darling number 2. And then everyone kind of goes head to head. And then a majority of everyone decides, oh, we don't like this person. We don't like that person. If you're not mobile, we're done. Let's talk about Desmond Ridder. For me, I think I'll let you do your spiel and then I'll comment on it.
Well, I appreciate that. But Desmond Ridder for me is my actual quarterback one in this draft class. I think he's the most NFL ready. Like, he runs the most NFL offense. He makes reads at all three levels of the field. He goes through his progressions. He has the footwork and the technical aspects of playing quarterback down. There are some issues with his accuracy at times, but if you watch all of these quarterbacks, none of them don't have like accuracy problems. They all have technical issues that they have to work through. So it's trying to find which quarterback really in this draft class is going to fit with your offense, you can get the most out of, because there is no, you can just play him everywhere. That there is not a guy in this draft class that you can just take and say, we'll figure it out. That's just unfortunately how it works
and I think that's how they all are. And I think that's what people are failing to realize. And we also see this every year where guys are, you know, they might be right there. And, like, there's things to like about all these guys, I think. Desmond Ridder, I'm with you on that. I love Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder, not talking talent-wise, but everything about him feels very much like Dak and how we kind of just brushed it under the table. He went a little bit later, and then you see him be able to flourish. Because I think Desmond Ridder has everything that you want in a quarterback, especially in this day and age with his mobility. And I think he shows improvement. Even when I was down at the Senior Bowl, one thing, he was one of the guys where every day he got better. And I think back, guys that stood out, Zion Johnson's another guy that you could tell, like, every day you're seeing these players, like, they're coachable. And I think something in today's, you know, the league that we have, that's a very good skill to have. My concern is, where does Desmond Ridder end up? Because he might be faced with a big challenge. There are some teams that need a quarterback. So do they screw him up? I don't know. But I think he has less of this risk of screwing up as, you know, I'm going to say it, as a Malik Willis. I think that there, you know, I have bigger concerns with a guy like that. Even looking at Sam Howell, which everyone hates this take of mine, but did his mobility come from the fact that he literally had to run that last year? Maybe. Is he going to go to a place that's we're going to watch him not be as mobile as you saw his senior year? But when you lose an O-line, we see it all the time. The quarterbacks start running. That doesn't mean they're mobile. It means they don't have any options. So Desmond Ridder is very interesting. I think that Cincinnati's program, too, did a very good job with these guys and allowing them to be ready to transition to the NFL because they're coachable. They have all the skills, but there's fine-tuning to be done. With Malik, tell me about Malik. You give me your Malik here.
You know, he's like Trayvon Walker. Trayvon Walker has the most upside of any defensive end in this draft class because he has the traits for it. Malik Willis has the most upside with it. The problem is that he doesn't read the field. Like, there's every other quarterback outside of Ridder, in my opinion, struggles in this aspect. Like Pickett, if he's not there, I'm pulling it down. Like, I'm doing something else with it. And that's kind of how Malik is. He's a great athlete in the open field, probably like a tier and a half below what Lamar Jackson does. And I wouldn't say he's that much better than Desmond Ridder is in terms of an athletic perspective in the open field. I think Ridder's extremely underrated in that department. And the accuracy stuff too, he's got a cannon. Like, he showed it off at his pro day. Like, we all know he's got a cannon. That's why people talked about his pro day, because he threw it 65 yards in the air. But the way you become a successful quarterback in the NFL is working the short to intermediate. Almost all these guys that have the arm can hit the deep throw at the good certain percentage. You have to be able to work the middle of the field. You have to see the defense, and you have to be able to find the windows. That's the biggest problem with Malik and his technical.
And you see Malik a lot because you watch film all the time, but you see him a lot. Like, he goes through one read, and then, like, I don't even know where his eyes are going at that point. Like, he's totally, there's a lot of, I don't want to use confusion because, I think Malik has a lot of talent. I just think that there are some things that if he doesn't it's not going to translate as well to the NFL. It's great to have a very strong arm. A lot of these guys got to this point, right? And I joked the other day, right? We love saying he's super athletic. Of course he's athletic. I mean, we're talking about D1 athletes that are that are entering the NFL draft. Of course they're athletic, but you have to look at is that athleticism kind of overpowering your opinion of the rest of the skills that you need. And I think even the league now, and everyone wants a mobile quarterback, and that's great. And we're kind of, now we don't like the Kirk Cousins. We don't like those types of guys because they're kind of just game it, but they do end up getting the job done. So there is something to that, and I get it. And one last thing before we move off of quarterbacks, let's talk about Kenny Pickett and how you feel about him, where you think he will end up going, because I will tell you at the Senior Bowl, and I love doing this, I always ask a question and then I decide to keep talking. But I wasn't impressed by any of the guys. I'll tell you, even the first day that I got there to practice, Carson Strong looked the best. And I'm not even kidding you. So, and everyone's tweeting about Malik. Well, Malik did not look great. His leadership was awesome and the guys loved him. But that first day I was I don't get the hype. Kenny Pickett was another one. I just, I get it, but is he one of those guys that maybe is getting the hype because of the success he had in college? And sometimes there's this, it's a little bit blurred between the two.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we have to understand that Kenny Pickett was 24 years old too. We saw him play I think it was 5 years of college. So, and you're at Pittsburgh, so you're also playing in the ACC. It's not the elite, the competition that you're facing. And he had a great last year. What was it? 4,300 yards, 42 touchdowns, 7 picks. All of that looks great. And I think that we kind of see the gamer in him. A lot of people compared him to Joe Burrow. Let's not do that with Kenny Pickett. Joe Burrow was a much more refined technical quarterback. His footwork, his anticipation, all of that was there. And it is obvious at LSU. Kenny's got some base struggles. He doesn't have the consistent footwork or the base to really continuously drive the football. And he needs that to be able to make up for what he lacks in arm strength to all areas of the field. He can't really drive it to the sidelines. You see it kind of die on some of his throws. And I think a lot of what he's dealt with is having a better offensive line than a lot. He does work the pocket pretty well. That's what you can say about him. I think he moves. That's probably where I think people compare more to Joe Burrow, is that he moves the pocket and navigates it pretty well. And then there's the reading. You have to, again, he doesn't see defenses as well. So there's so much projection with a lot of these guys because they have, especially Kenny, because he's 24 years old now. He's going to be, I think Joe Burrow is still younger than
a lot of these guys are older too. Something that people are not realizing, and I think COVID played a piece into this.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys, this is the first time, at least that I remember, and I could be wrong, right? I'm not looking at these numbers. I don't know. I don't track ages, but for me, this is the first time I remember this big of a discrepancy between everyone's either really old or they're young. And there's not a lot of those guys that are in this and COVID probably participated into that, but there's something to note on that. Is that, yes, they're older. They didn't go the normal route that we've seen because COVID really shook that up.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, the numbers are all over the place. Corral's 23. You got Ridder 22. Howell's 21. Willis is 22. They're all over the place. It's not a consistent group. And like you said, I think COVID had a huge impact on that. So it's hard to really know how they're going to perform at the next level with as much inconsistency the last 2 years that they had in interrupting their development, honestly.
Right. Absolutely. I completely agree. And I'll move. This is going to segment me right into segment. Long day trying to watch golf and move and do all the things I'm doing. Let's transition to another guy that didn't see a lot of strong competition. Someone that got a lot of attention right off the bat. Again, it's very easy to fall in love with these guys. We see these flashy moves, but let's talk tight ends. Tight ends are one of the, thorns in our side in fantasy football, especially the last couple of years. Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina. Very strong hands. Fantastic. Past 2 seasons, 89 catches, 1,500 plus yards. I mean, everything is there that you like on paper. 17 touchdowns. He's fast, fluid enough, can line up almost all over the field. How do you feel about Mr. Likely? Because I think that he started out with a lot of hype. Now maybe he's falling a little bit too far, or is he not? Where are we at with Likely, and as far as it translates to fantasy as well?
it's hard with a lot of these smaller school guys, and the Coastal Carolina offense is one of the more adventurous, I would say, in college football. You see a lot of different things that they do. They use Isaiah Likely as a deep threat as well. He had a 99-yard touchdown against Arkansas State, but I mean, that was just blown coverage. They blitzed and he was wide open and just ran for a touchdown. But you still, as a tight end, have to be able to run 99 yards down the field and not get tackled. So there's something to be said about his speed, even though it didn't show up in his combine run or his pro day run. It wasn't great. It was like a 4.8, if I'm not mistaken. But if when I watch the tape, I don't see that kind of speed. I think he's a much more fluid and a much more bursty athlete than showed up in his testing. And multiple things is they do count against him. He's not the best blocker. He's better when he's used as a wham tight end or a pulling tight end. He's not going to be engaged with defensive ends and help you in that regard. He's a bit smaller than you'd like, 6'4".
Yeah, that was like a big knock on him too.
Yeah, so he's kind of this like slot wham wide tight end that you can move around a lot. You can get him in motion and attack the seams of the field, down the field a little bit. He does have some decent body control. I think he's better more of an athlete than anything else. A guy who's not going to be a great blocker in the NFL, which is going to hurt your playing time. And we see that with tight ends all the time. But there are certain guys like, I mean, I'm not going to compare him to Travis Kelce because that's not the same thing. But the extent he was at Cincinnati, Kelce was. So he was asked to block more. He came into the NFL as a guy who was athletic, but they didn't use him that way. And then he exploded because, hey, wait, this guy's a really, really good athlete. So unfortunately for Likely, it's not like he's 6'6" and can kind of build the muscle on him. He doesn't have that frame to add more and keep being that downfield threat. So he's going to find himself in a tough situation being that light, 245. He's about 20 pounds more than a normal receiver, which doesn't really work for you either as a tight end. And so it's tough for him. I do think he's a faster guy than his testing gives you, but finding a spot in the NFL as a tweener tight end doesn't usually work out for you. So as much as I like him as a receiver, he's kind of a tweener right now, and it's really hard to project him as a useful fantasy asset in that regard.
Oh my gosh, do you know who he reminds me of? There's certain things, but you know who he's giving me vibes of is Evan Ingram. He's giving me Evan Ingram vibes. Yeah. It's this very athletic, and this was before. I feel like we're transitioning, like in general, the NFL is transitioning towards like these hybrid players where you're seeing like these tight end / wide receiver, or it's a running back / wide receiver. Now I'm like describing Atlanta's depth chart at this point. But you're seeing these guys where like they don't totally fit what the expectation is even physically for tight ends. Even Evan Ingram is very similar. He plays very much like a wide receiver. He doesn't have that blocking aspect, which I will credit him, and I never credit Evan Ingram. He did get better at blocking. I will say that. But he gives me Evan Ingram vibes where it's like the hype is very much around like the athlete that he is, and that he is quicker than you would expect. Yeah. And he's very fluid and he can line up all over the field. My problem with guys like this is where they can cross into either way is the team needs to know how to use them. And he's one of those guys. All these guys are like that. You think of a Cordero Patterson. Why is he just having success now? Even like Debo, guys like that, you just need to know how to actually play them. So I worry about Isaiah Likely, that he will end up on a team that maybe does not benefit his skill set. He's someone, as far as fantasy goes, and again, people can be great. They can be great football players. Yeah. Doesn't mean we want them in fantasy. If you were to name one tight end that you will be going after in your next rookie draft, who would it be?
Jake Ferguson. I think that he's like we see Wisconsin go and underutilize, misutilized players all the time. Yeah. That's what they do. They're like, we're going to run the ball. We're not going to use these guys to their best place because we know exactly what we want to do. And they made Jake Ferguson be more of a blocking tight end, but he flashes every time he's throwing the ball. He has great body control. He's got a great catch radius. And I think that he's somebody that's going to find his way into an NFL roster, but you have that upside as a blocker. And then he just starts to carve his way down the seams. He starts to make big plays here and there. Not like, a Pat Freiermuth did last year. He's not that type of an athlete, but that kind of arc in terms of he gets on the field a little bit here, maybe due to some injuries. Then he starts playing a little bit better, and you find a trusted player, not only in the red zone because he has strong hands, but as a guy you can have on all 3 downs because he can block, he can run routes, and he can just catch the ball. As a tight end with a quarterback, we hear it all the time. Having that reliable tight end is always like a quarterback's best friend. And he's someone I see fit right into that mold in the NFL. So I'm probably going to be targeting him.
Yeah.
He's like a 4th round dart throw in rookie drafts.
And I love that.
Yeah, just take him and say, hey, if it turns into something great, if not a big deal.
At least for me, and I know we do kind of have similar, I love tight ends. I love my tight ends in fantasy. I will stack up. I will stock up. I will have as many tight ends as I can. And especially in rookie drafts.
Mm-hmm.
At the end there, no, I don't want to throw a dart on a random wide receiver.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason he's going X amount later in the NFL draft. Like I'd rather throw a couple darts at tight end, which is a position that we've seen not, the past couple of years, tight ends and running backs, everyone's getting hurt. It's hard to find a guy that fits every system. So I love throwing darts in at tight ends, especially in those last rounds of these rookie drafts. I can't stand when my rookie drafts go over 4 rounds. Definitely not my vibe at all.
It's not fun.
I cannot stand that. It's something that I totally stay away from. But another guy that you use the word underutilized, and I'm kind of throwing one here because I don't think that you and I have talked about this yet. But Mr. Dameon Pierce, I think he was underutilized, and I think he's going to be a guy. James Cook is another one that I start to think about where you didn't see as much of him as you wanted to, but Dameon Pierce has that nastiness at running back that you want. He has strong hands. He is, I think, not getting the attention that he should be. He's someone that even at the Senior Bowl, I could not take my eyes off of him. Like it was impossible.
Yeah.
And I don't know. What are your thoughts on Mr. Dameon Pierce here?
So this is someone who I didn't watch him until later in the process either.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because I had heard Doug Farrar has him as his running back 1. I was like, no, this can't be possible. This dude, I've never won him. I've never really heard of him. And I was just like, I'd looked up his numbers. He's not super fast. He's like a 4.6 guy. He's not going to run away from anybody in the NFL. But the way he moves, violent with a purpose is how I describe how he moves. Everything he does makes sense. He rarely goes down on first contact, and he's twitchier than you'd expect for a guy who can just run you over. Like a legit athlete in the short area, and I would imagine he could probably hurdle some guys and actually stay on his feet. I'm not sure if he actually did that. I don't remember in all the film that I have. Limited film on Florida running backs. So, but
you have limited too because he wasn't used a lot. But the thing is, like he got a lot. He's one of those guys where there was kind of things that people were knocking him on. Like when I watched him, I actually thought he was pretty good in pass protection. I think that was a knock that was unfair to him. Yeah. Did you not get as many reps that you would have liked to watch him on? Me. But I think when I saw it, he did a good job. Another thing that he has exceptional body control. Yeah. And you see, almost very like Kadarius Toney, like in the sense where it's like does not stop, makes guys miss, understands his body, and he's hard to take down. Like he can get hit, he can take on a little bit of pressure, and he can keep going. My favorite clip of him is his helmet falling off and him still literally bulldozing over guys, and still doing it very, just dominating the field. He's one of those guys, you get him the ball, you know how to use him. He can be good in pass protection despite everything everyone said. I just think a lot of it is likely due to how underutilized he was. So he's actually someone, as far as my rookie draft, I've been taking him best ball too. I am a big fan of Dameon Pierce, him and James Cook as well. I think both of them are not getting the attention that they should have. I think James Cook put on the weight that we wanted to see him do. He's not the biggest or the strongest guy, right? Was all the knocks, but he's very elusive. Good hands, again, these guys, and the body control. His production is also consistent. And I hate when everyone talks about Dalvin. And I want everyone to see them as different guys because I think that they're a different type of running back. Yes, I think that the underlying genetics are there. Yes, I see it. I get it. He has a receiving ability that's fantastic. And again, very elusive, very savvy. I think he reads openings much better than a lot of the guys. So he's another one. Those two guys I'm keeping my eye on. And I know I'm running you over here. I chat too much. But we'll jump into wide receiver. Two of the guys I want to get your opinion on is one, Calvin Austin, two, Skyy Moore. We can start with Skyy Moore. I know you did a beautiful thread. If you guys don't follow Dan already on Twitter, please go follow him. His breakdowns are fantastic. They're also very easy to consume, and it's not everyone puts out very digestible content, and he does a fantastic job. So let's talk about Skyy Moore, Calvin Austin, and then we'll wrap things up.
Man, Skyy Moore is they say about him, he just gets open. Like he's just one of those players in this draft that knows the field. He knows who he's going up against, how to win. And there's one qualm I have is that when you turn on a tape like against Northern Illinois, okay, he's dominant in that game, and then you flip on the Michigan tape and you see the bump in the competition level and the better athletes and the better players. You notice that he has a little bit more trouble. Not that he can't get open, because he did multiple times in that game, and their offensive line was garbage because you're playing against David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson. So that does show up, but it's obvious that he knows the ins and outs of playing. He has a multitude of release packages, inside, outside. Hand usage is incredible. So he's going to be able to create separation in the NFL because of the multiple ways that he can get off the line of scrimmage. He doesn't have to be. And I know his combine tested that he was like a 4.3 guy, 4.4 guy.
Right, yeah.
Doesn't show up in play speed, in my opinion. So I think he'll struggle vertically at times, but intermediate, short, some yak ability, tough runner after the catch, and again, focused hand usage.
And with him too, incredible. I think the big thing to highlight is that after the catch, and that's something that you look for, especially in this day and age, as far as what your wide receivers go. And he excels in space. He's great after the catch. That's all you need. And I think his football IQ is also higher than most. I think he's able to read what the hell is going on before other guys. And that's why, right? So any disadvantage that you may knock him for, I think he can make up for it in that football IQ. There's a few things. Yes, I get the knocks on him, but I think he ends up going higher. If you're in a rookie draft right now, where are you taking Skyy Moore?
I'm taking him in the second round. Like I probably back half of the second round. I think you're gonna, even in the first, depending on who's already gone, how the wide receiver run is, especially with the quarterbacks in this draft. I'm not super like, oh, okay, I'll take a quarterback in the second. I'd rather take a shot on a Skyy Moore or one of those running backs like a James Cook, for example, if he's not gone. So that's right where I would take him. And I think that you're going to get a guy with high floor, especially in PPR leagues.
Yeah. And he's one of the guys too. And there's a lot of these guys actually in this draft that are converted to a position. So like they started out somewhere. I think he played quarterback. He might have been a defensive back too. And that's where he gets those strong hands. And I think that's where a lot of that football IQ comes in. So a team is going to see him. They're going to see a savvy route runner. They're going to see someone that's explosive. They're going to see someone that has after the catch ability, and they're going to go after it. I mean, you're getting a productive slot receiver that I think can give you consistency, especially if he goes to a team that already has a quarterback that's ready to rock.
Exactly.
I'm all in on him, and Calvin Austin. So I'll wrap up on here before I steal your whole night. I'll have to get you back on because we could probably chat all night. I know you didn't watch too much. And Calvin Austin, he's another one. He doesn't have a lot of tape to watch. So let's talk Calvin Austin, and then I'll get you out of here.
This is one of those guys that's electric. Like he has not just return ability, but he in the open field, he finds his crease and he's probably gone. Like that's what he does. That's his best attribute. The problem is he's like 170 pounds. Like he's better than Tutu Atwell. Don't get it twisted. He's not Tutu Atwell. Tutu Atwell is not going to play in the NFL. Period. Like he's just not going to. But Calvin Austin can actually get on the field as a third or fourth guy, someone you want to get the ball to and let him work specifically on some wide receiver screens in the return game early. He has actually decent hand usage at the line of scrimmage, even though he's going to be slotted as a slot receiver in the NFL. He can win against press, and once he beats you and stacks you, it's over. Like it's over. He explodes and it's gone. Even in the NFL, he has that speed that it doesn't matter. He beats you, he stacks you, he's gone. If you don't have a safety over top, he's taken to the house. So that's the biggest issue and the biggest thing you see with receivers nowadays is that speed. It's not like Jameson Williams is going to go in the top 10, in my opinion, because he's the most sudden, the fastest player in this draft and the way he knows how to use it. Calvin Austin is not to that extent in terms of knowing how to use it all the time. But the simple fact of the matter is, with speed being what it is, if you can find a way to get him open in space or down the field, he will electrify, pump that offensive firepower, score a big touchdown, and really electrify your team. So he's a guy who you're going to find probably third, fourth round of your rookie draft that you could easily take a shot on and hope for some real potential with that speed.
Absolutely. I agree. And it's easy, we knock this. And I remember even writing my notes. I think Tiny AF was like the first thing I wrote down with him because he's tiny, And I said right off the bat, I go, those Devontae Smith BMI crowd there is going to have a field day with this kid. And I get it. And there's something to that, right? He is a tiny guy. He can get good separation though, and there's something to that. He's a better route runner, I think, than he gets credit for. But again, you have to be able to use him and know that he literally is not the biggest dude. So how do we use him so that you put him in the best position? Another guy that I think does have great football IQ and great body control, and he's really consistent. I went to the Senior Bowl and I'm like, I don't even care. Another one, like it was Calvin Austin, Dameon Pierce, Connor Hayward, guys that you can't not look at because they were just dominating. And his ability to just be heavily defended and just once he gets the ball, it's done. And I think that he's someone that in those later rounds is worth taking over the guys that, everyone's talking about. They fit the role. But if he can go to a place, I think he can be a very big playmaker for any team if they're able, again, to utilize him right.
Exactly. Bet on if you're in the later rounds of your rookie drafts, find players with speed. Bet on speed because even if they're not the most consistent player, take Elijah Mitchell, for example. He was a dart throw at the end of your rookie draft last year, but guess what? He's got speed. When he hits the hole, he's gone. Calvin Austin is a guy that if he gets on the field and finds a way to produce legitimate touchdowns down the field, he's going to help you win your league.
Calvin Austin was an All-American on the Memphis track team. My boy is fast, okay? Like all you need to do is get him open, get him the ball, and it's done because he has that speed. So how do you unlock that? And he's a guy that you definitely want to be looking for in those later rounds. Why don't you name one more guy that we haven't talked about tonight that you are looking for in your rookie drafts, and then I'll get you out of here.
John Mechie is the most under talked about player in this entire draft because he's hurt. But Jameson Williams, his teammates hurt too, and he's getting talked up the whole time. This guy is not as fast or as sudden, but he's like a third of a tier below him. That's how fast he is. I think he's that good. I know he has drop problems. So does Jameson Williams. He's not the biggest guy. Neither is Jameson Williams. Like they talk about these guys that are their speed. I believe he's a sub 4.4 guy. It looks like he is on tape. He's sudden. He can run all the routes. I think he's actually got really good body control for his size. Can catch the ball through contact as well. And yes, I know the drops are a problem, but drops not a problem for fantasy. I don't care. Drops don't matter in fantasy. Touchdowns and big playability matter.
Evan Ingram, then they count. There's only one player they count for. Evan Ingram, they count for, but drops we'll talk about. And again, those are things that can improve over time. Situation matters. You get to a team, and that stuff can change. A lot of it, some things are coachable, despite what everyone thinks.
They're right.
Things can be coachable. I have one last question. I lied to you, and then I will actually get you out of here. Who are the Chiefs taking first round? What are we doing?
Oh man, if I knew, there's been so much smoke around trading up. I would prefer they stay put personally.
Yeah, I think
2 picks right there. But there's a lot of talk about them going to get Jameson Williams. If he falls past 11, past 13, I'm willing to bet they're going to move up to get him. That's not even like that's legit. They're trying to get Jameson Williams. He falls past a certain point, but they're going defense. Like they're going to go defense. They're going to get themselves a defensive end. Hopefully David Ojabo if he falls to 30. Just take him.
I love him. I might have to have you on next week and we'll do a whole defense episode.
I'm good. That'd be awesome.
So. But yeah, I agree. I think he's another guy that is going to fall and fantastic. Love it.
Awesome.
All right. Tell everyone where they find you, what you're working on right now. So that everyone, listen, you guys film some of the best breakdowns that I see. Didn't even get to talk to you about my Daniel Jones, but that's okay. We'll save it for the next episode. Tell everyone where they can find you, because if you like to watch film, even if you don't like watching film, great breakdowns.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. So I'm in multiple places. You can find me on Twitter at InHarmsWay19. That's my handle. I actually also have a Twitch page. I do breakdowns there too. I watch my own players. So you could find me there at twitch.tv/InHarmsWay19. I make it very easy for you to find me. And then the very last place, all my Chiefs stuff, all my Chiefs breakdowns, my videos are at rgrfootball.com. They'll take you right to the page itself. And then Fantasy Football Astronauts, we just released our rookie guide last week. It did a ton of stuff on that. So you can check that out if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely do that too. Those rookie guides, like, they give you everything that you need, especially if you're not someone that's as involved in every single play. You get kind of a snippet. It might even direct you in the way that, like, oh, let me go look at it. This is what it says. What do I see myself? But Dan, this has been a long time coming. Definitely have to have you on again. We have to talk defense as well. I can talk to you all. I told you we're at 41 minutes. I told you I'd keep you at 30. I tried my best. So I stayed under 45. But you're fantastic. Everyone, please go check him out. You will not regret it. And we will catch you guys on the flip.